Ever get that feeling like you're drowning in information, trying to keep up with everything online? I bet it's especially tough for someone like you who really wants to understand stuff deeply. Where do you even begin with so much noise out there?
Oh, it's definitely a challenge. I mean, there's just so much data flying around. It's like, how do you sift through it all? And that's where, this whole idea of the attention economy comes in. It's basically this constant battle for our, mental focus because we only have so much attention to give.
Right. And this isn't exactly like a brand new concept, right?
Yeah.
Looking at what we've got for today's deep dive, it seems like the term itself, attention economy, has been around for a while, like since the 70s even. And it really started gaining traction in the 90s.
Yeah, you're right. It's been brewing for a while, and we've got some really interesting sources to dig into today. We've got a guide for marketers from Viral Nation. They look at how businesses are trying to, grab our attention in this crazy online world.
And then there's that YouTube transcript from Deja Sade.
Right. That one gets into how, strong emotions, stuff like anger are actually being used to make money in this attention economy.
Pretty wild.
And then to get a different perspective, we've got an article from the Nielsen Norman Group, which looks at the attention economy from a user experience point of view, like how it affects how we interact with, websites and apps and all that.
And lastly, a UN briefing document that analyzes the big picture challenges and some possible solutions for this whole attention economy thing.
Exactly. So we've got a good mix of viewpoints here.
Definitely. And what we're going to try to do today is pull out the most important insights from all these different sources so you can get a better handle on what this attention economy really is, how it's shaping your experience online, and maybe some ways to deal with it without feeling totally overwhelmed.
That sounds like a good plan.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. What exactly is the attention economy?
Well, the big shift, I think, is recognizing that in today's digital world, our attention has become this super valuable commodity. Like some would argue it's even more valuable than money in some cases.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, Viral Nation put it pretty bluntly. The currency that drives success is not purely monetary, it's attention.
Wow.
And the Nielsen Norman Group backs that up too. They say attention is one of the most valuable resources of the digital age.
That really hits home when you think about all the information out there just bombarding us constantly. It's not like we're lacking information anymore, right? It's more like we're lacking the capacity to, actually focus on it all.
Exactly. And that's what the UN report really highlighted. They pointed out that only a tiny fraction of all the digital data being generated actually gets analyzed.
So it's like a bottleneck.
Exactly. It's our ability to focus that's become the limiting factor. And, well, we haven't suddenly, developed superhuman attention spans, right?
Nope.
Hmm.
Still feel like mine's shrinking, actually.
Right. And the Viral Nation Guide mentioned this study from Microsoft. They found that the average attention span dropped from 12 seconds in 2000 to just 8 seconds by 2015.
Wow, that's a big drop.
Yeah. And, Herbert Simon, the guy that Nielsen Norman Group mentioned, he famously said, "A wealth of information creates a poverty of attention." He saw attention as a bottleneck in human thought.
That makes sense.
So, with so much information competing for our attention, it's no wonder it's become so sought after.
Okay, so attention is valuable, it's limited, but how does it actually work as a currency? It's not like we're literally, handing over little bits of our attention when we buy stuff. Or are we, in a way?
Well, in a sense, we kind of are. Think about all those free online services we use, right?
Okay.
We're not paying for them with money, but we are paying with our attention.
Ah, right.
And then those platforms turn around and monetize that attention, through ads, data collection, all that stuff. Our clicks, our likes, the time we spend watching a video, all that becomes valuable data that they can sell.
So our attention is the price we pay for,
Yeah.
access to all this stuff online. Okay, that makes the whole economy part a bit clear.
Right.
So let's talk about the tactics that businesses are using to win this battle for our attention. What's in the marketer's playbook, so to speak?
Well, Viral Nation says the old way of marketing, like that linear customer journey, it's pretty much gone. Now it's all about what they call micro moments. These are super brief moments where someone's intent is really clear, and catching their attention in those moments is crucial.
Micro moments. Interesting. So instead of one long campaign, it's more about these little bursts of attention grabbing. What kind of moments are we talking about here?
Exactly. They break it down into 4 categories. First, there are I want to know moments. That's when someone's actively searching for information about something. Then there are I want to go moments, like when they're looking for a local business or directions.
Okay, so far so good.
Then we have I want to do moments, where they need help figuring out how to do something. And finally, I want to buy moments when they're ready to make a purchase. So marketers have to be ready to jump in during all these little moments of need or curiosity.
That makes sense. So how are they actually doing that? What are some of the key strategies they're using to grab our attention in those micro moments?
Well, Viral Nation outlines 10 key strategies. One of the big ones is influencer marketing,
Oh, right?
because people tend to trust recommendations from real people more than they trust traditional ads.
Yeah, definitely.
So brands are partnering with influencers to build that trust and ultimately, get people to buy their stuff. They even highlighted Audible's influencer collaborations as a successful example of this. They work with influencers all over the world. It really shows how the whole marketing landscape is changing.
Makes sense. What else? What other strategies are they using?
Another really important one is a mobile-first approach.
Oh, yeah, I can see why that's important these days.
Absolutely. I mean, most internet traffic comes from mobile devices now. They said it was 67.56% as of May 2024.
Wow.
So having a website that works well on phones and, using mobile-friendly content like vertical videos, it's not just an option anymore. It's essential.
Got it. What else?
Well, they also emphasize data-driven personalization. That's all about using the information they gather about us to create really tailored experiences, like those ads that seem to know exactly what you're thinking.
Yeah, those are kind of freaky sometimes.
Right. And then, of course, there's the need for engaging and shareable content. They emphasize the importance of storytelling and visual.
Yeah, you got to grab people's attention somehow.
Exactly. They pointed to GoPro's success with user-generated content as a great example of this. All those amazing action videos, it just feels authentic and exciting.
Oh, yeah, those are awesome. What else?
They also stress the importance of having a consistent presence across all the different channels a brand uses. Keeping the same tone and messaging everywhere. And then obviously, measuring success is key. You got to track those engagement rates and conversions to see what's actually working. They talked about embracing authenticity, too, being transparent about a brand's values. They gave the example of Remax creators who share, real-world advice. It's not just about selling, it's about building trust.
Right, people can smell a phony a mile away.
Yeah.
What else is in their playbook?
They talk about taking personalization even further, like creating tailored e-commerce homepages that adapt to individual user preferences.
Oh, that's really personalized.
It is. And then there's the power of emotionally charged content. Their research showed that using moral emotional language can increase engagement by something like 17 to 24%. And finally, they emphasize the importance of user-generated content again because it just feels more authentic and trustworthy.
It's interesting to see all these different strategies laid out.
Yeah.
And it definitely makes you think twice about your own online experience,
Right.
How are you being influenced by all this stuff? Now, speaking of influence, the Deja Sade transcript got into a pretty controversial aspect of the attention economy, this whole rage content thing.
Yeah, that's a whole other level.
Can you explain what that is for those who might not know?
Sure. So rage content, or rage baiting, is basically content that's deliberately designed to make people angry.
On purpose?
Yep. The goal isn't really to inform or educate or even persuade. It's to get a reaction, to make people so angry or outraged that they'll, comment, share, engage with the content, which of course drives traffic and makes money for the creators and the platforms.
So it's all about pushing people's buttons.
Exactly. And anger is a really powerful emotion online. The transcript pointed out that people are way more likely to share content that makes them feel wronged or indignant compared to content that makes them feel happy or sad.
That's kind of depressing, actually.
It is. And the algorithms that run social media, they actually make this worse.
Really? How?
Well, those algorithms are designed to prioritize content that gets a lot of engagement, right?
Yeah.
But they don't really care if that engagement is positive or negative. So sensational stuff, outrage-inducing stuff, it often ends up getting more visibility. And the more we see it, the more we engage with it, the more the algorithm thinks it's good content and shows it to even more people. It's a vicious cycle.
Man, that's a scary thought. So why do we even fall for this stuff? Why do we keep engaging with content that just makes us angry?
The transcript talked about a few possible reasons. For some people, it might be a sense of familiarity. If they've experienced a lot of drama or chaos in their lives, they might actually find it comforting in a weird way.
Wow.
For others, it might be a distraction from their own problems. And there's also a physiological reason. When we experience strong emotions, even negative ones, Our brains release dopamine.
Dopamine, like the feel-good chemical.
Yeah, so it's like we get a little reward for getting angry, which can make us want to seek out that feeling again.
That's messed up.
It is. And all this rage content, it has a real impact on how we talk to each other, how we think about the world.
Right, because when you're angry, you're not exactly thinking clearly.
Exactly. Strong emotions can cloud our judgment, make us less likely to check facts before we share stuff, and that leads to the spread of misinformation.
And the algorithms just make it worse, right? We were talking about that earlier. The transcript mentioned something about how, like, extreme viewpoints get more attention online.
Yeah, it quoted someone from Silicon Valley who said that if you want your posts to get more visibility, you basically just have to be more aggressive and negative.
Wow.
Because the algorithm sees that as a sign of engagement.
Yeah.
So the most extreme voices end up getting the most attention.
That's a recipe for disaster.
It is. And the transcript also talked about how all this can be used for like really harmful purposes, like political manipulation and spreading disinformation.
Oh, yeah, that's scary.
They gave the example of conservative influencers who were allegedly spreading misinformation that was actually paid for by Russia.
Wow.
And the UN report talked about how personal data can be used to manipulate people's behavior, even violate human rights. And then the Nielsen Norman Group pointed out that a lot of these platforms are designed to be addictive, to keep us hooked.
So what can we do about it? Are we just, like, stuck in this cycle?
Not necessarily. The Nielsen Norman Group article mentions some ways people are adapting. Some are just trying to limit their time online, using those parental control features or even deleting apps.
Good idea. I know a lot of people who are trying to be more mindful about, like, how much time they spend online.
And then there are more subtle adaptations like banner blindness.
Hmm.
That's where we've basically trained our brains to ignore those ads on websites.
Ah, right.
And we're also getting better at filtering out all those notifications. It's like our brains are trying to protect us from this constant barrage of information.
Like a defense mechanism.
Yeah, I guess so.
And this is where media literacy comes in. Both Deja Said and the UN report talked about how important it is to navigate this whole crazy information landscape.
So what exactly is media literacy?
Well, Deja Said defined it as the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, create, and act using all forms of communication.
Okay, that's a lot.
It is, but it's basically about becoming more aware of how media works, how it influences us, and how we can use it effectively.
So it's about being more active and thoughtful, not just passive consumers of information.
Exactly.
So what are some things we can do to improve our media literacy?
Well, the Deja Said transcript had some good tips. One of the most important is source verification.
So like checking where the information is coming from.
Yep. Look at the domain name,
Yeah.
.gov or .edu site.
Right?
And there are also some browser extensions you can use, like NewsGuard and Media Bias Fact Check. They'll give you an idea of how credible a website is and what kind of biases it might have.
That's a good idea.
Another important tip is to seek out diverse perspectives. Don't just read news from one source or one political viewpoint. Try to get a well-rounded view of things.
Makes sense.
They recommended using AI tools like ChatGPT or websites like MediaBiasFactCheck.com and AllSides.com to help identify bias. There's this cool site called Ground News that shows you how different news outlets are covering the same story.
That's interesting.
It is. The next tip is fact-checking.
Oh, right.
If something sounds too good to be true, or if it makes you really angry, don't just share it right away. Take a moment to check if it's actually true. Sites like Snopes and PolitiFact can help with that.
Good advice.
And finally, they talked about the importance of asking critical questions.
Like about the content itself.
Yeah. Think about the purpose of the content, whether it's playing on your own biases, whether the claims are verifiable.
It's like being your own fact checker.
Exactly.
So we've talked about the dark side of the attention economy, but the UN report actually offered a more hopeful vision. They called it the yellow economy.
Oh, yeah, that was interesting.
Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So the yellow economy is basically a more sustainable and human-centered alternative to how things are now. They chose the color yellow because it's associated with, like, logic and clarity.
Right.
The idea is to shift away from this purely attention-driven model and move towards something that's more focused on, like, well-being and, making sure everyone benefits.
So it's like a more ethical and conscious approach to the digital world.
Exactly.
What are some of the key principles of this yellow economy?
Well, the UN report outlined 10 of them.
10.
Yeah. They include things like individual sovereignty over our data and attention, meaning we should have more control over how our information is used. There's also harmlessness, making sure digital content doesn't violate human rights or promote harmful behavior.
Okay, I see.
Privacy and data protection are obviously crucial, as well as transparency about how our data is being used.
Makes sense.
They also talk about accountability for everyone involved in the digital ecosystem, fairness and inclusivity to make sure everyone has equal access and opportunity, and freedom from exploitation.
So it's really about like putting people first.
Exactly. They also emphasize harmony with nature, considering the environmental impact of the digital world and the importance of attention literacy so people can understand and manage their own attention better.
It's a pretty comprehensive vision.
It is. And the report also talks about the need for better regulations and ethical guidelines for digital platforms, like the GDPR in Europe, although they acknowledge it's not perfect.
Right.
And they emphasize the need to move beyond just measuring success by, economic indicators like GDP.
Right.
We need to consider the broader impact on like mental health, social cohesion, and even democracy.
It's a big shift in thinking.
It is. So if we had to sum up the key takeaway from all this, I'd say it's that our attention is this incredibly valuable resource, but it's also finite, and we're living in a world that's designed to capture and monetize it, sometimes even exploit it.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And by understanding how this attention economy works, from the clever marketing tactics to the dangers of, rage bait and manipulation, we can become more informed and make more conscious choices
Yeah.
about what we pay attention to.
Exactly.
And hopefully we can start to shift the balance a bit, Maybe we can collectively choose to pay more attention to things that actually matter,
Right.
that enrich our lives,
Yeah.
rather than just things that are designed to, trigger us or keep us hooked.
That would be amazing.
It would. So here's a thought for you, our listener. What if we all made a conscious effort to pay our attention to things that genuinely make us better, more informed, more connected to the world around us?
That's a great challenge.
It is. And if enough of us do that, maybe we can start to reshape this attention economy into something, a little less chaotic, a little more meaningful.
I like that.
So we encourage you to keep exploring these ideas. Check out the sources we discussed today. Learn more about this yellow economy concept.
Yeah, keep the conversation going.
Because our attention is precious. Let's use it wisely.